Greetings, friends. The operational situation at the front and the main news for the 22nd of April. We will start with you from the Seversky direction. Today, there are reports that the enemy is carrying out assault operations in the Bologorovka area. And shots were also published from the enemy side, where smoke camouflage is used, as reported before a large-scale offensive. However, I do not think that everything is as they say now. Why? Because, firstly, there was no news afterwards that large-scale offensive actions were going to Bologorovka, and the second point is that they are not focusing more on Bologorovka, and if we are more specific now, I would say a section in the direction of Verkhnekamenskoye. We have a dominant height here. Part is under the control of Russian troops, part is under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. And accordingly, Russian troops made a very big bet on this area, probing in the direction of Verkhnekamenskoye, if we say at all. Over the past 10 days, we have been taking from Zolotarevka, attacking in the direction of the chalk quarry. Attempts to bypass the chalk quarry, but in general they made a big bet and transferred forces to Zolotarevka. What is reported on Bologorovka? There is a slightly different topographic component. Here it turns out the dominant height of the APU and the dominant height of the enemy of the Russian troops. Then the immutability between them, so this is not the best place to conduct a large-scale offensive. In any case, on the part of the enemy, we state that the assault operations are continuing, which we wrote about in the telegram, which we have been talking about in general for the last few days, but this is not something large-scale, as they say today. The fighting continues, but it has a local positional character in this sector of the front. We turn to the Boyar direction. The fighting continues west of Bogdanovka. Everyone is also betting on breaking through to the Orlov tract, without any changes. They manage to repel the attacks, and are betting on advancing to the farms that already belong to Kalinovka. So there is one mainstay in this area. It is occupied by Russian troops, and attempts are being made from it to advance along a small landing here to the farms themselves, meaning to the basements of these farms, where you can catch on, gain a foothold, but there have been no reports that they managed to take it. Although there are a number of reports from the Russian side, the fact that they allegedly managed to take, from our side, refuted this information. Therefore, well, in any case, we do not have visual confirmation of this information. And if we take into account where the counterattacks were carried out, most likely, this area is either under control in the forest or in the gray zone, because we recorded the movement of the APU approximately in the area between the farm and the Orlov tract. According to the Clock Yar without changes, according to Ivanovsky also without changes. And we turn to the Avdiivka direction, where we have the main ones. The first is the Pokrov direction. I still can't get used to it, where we have major changes. The fighting has been going on for the last 24 hours, I would say, of a positional nature. Not because we do not record changes here, because there are attempts from the Russian side to advance. But there are battles between two positions, actually taking place along two streets, but no changes have been recorded. So positional ones remain. Here it was a very big bet on the turn on the part of the enemy, and let's just say that the visual information that we are going to announce now is conditionally relevant, because there is new further information about the battles a little more trapped. Well, let's start from everything in order. So the first moment, I published in my telegram with a link from drone footage. The Russian troops were in this position in the largest circle. I hope it can be seen. So they were in this position. The assault actions took place both from the substation and from the south. However, we said yesterday that the Russian side is betting on moving to the neighboring streets, that is, in a westerly direction, well, approximately to this area. This is the first moment, yes. But today, fresh footage from the APU was published, which means that with the support of Bradley, they launched a counterattack. As we can see from the recent footage with the drone, Udrishnym in the western part, and Bradley began firing at buildings where Russian troops were supposed to be. This is it circled where this building is located. This is the second extreme from the west. In general, this information is being clarified. In any case, there are reports on this area that Bradley has worked out. So Russian troops are not present, but a gray zone is added to the streets that are already parallel to each other, and, accordingly, a red zone is where they are entrenched, but this is still information for yesterday. That is, we said that gray zone, but in fact fixed to a depth of 330 meters. The situation today looks approximately conditionally as follows. Why is it roughly conditional? Because we have noted where they have gained a foothold, but in fact, as you can see, they are conducting assault operations much to the west of these positions, so the situation is being clarified in this area. Well, let's add that the APU is now conducting counterattacks on this sector of the front. The second point, we will also voice it, is that we talk to you, they are attacking along the railway, there is just an open area here. It is convenient for drones to work in such an open area. Accordingly, they try not to move in the depths of the development where there may be many surprises, namely in the northern part. In the southern part of the queue, that is, south of the railway. Well, there was a moment when they managed to cross the railway. There are destroyed buildings and ruins there, and in general, there is also a presence in this zone. But this is again, now the information is for clarification, because there are active hostilities both on the part of Russian troops and on the part of our troops, the APU counterattacks. There is a moment that they are now reporting that they can go to Novobakhmutovka due to the fact that they get a height of 240, dominating. Here we have two heights of 240 and 241 and, accordingly, in relation to Solovyev's Novobakhmutovka, first of all Bakhmutovka. It is quite likely, right now this option is quite likely, but again everything will depend on what happens in the next, I would say probably 3 or 4 days in the zone of the southern part of the queue, if they manage to gain a foothold at the dominant height and expand the control zone. Accordingly, on the field, do not forget they are digging in the fields, the positions we also said yesterday. This is from the words of the APU fighters that we said for Bogdanovka, that they dug in very seriously in case of a serious counterattack from the APU, that is, they understand perfectly well that the battle of the head of the Yar will be long, as well as the battle for Bakhmut, I mean a period of time. So they are very seriously starting to dig in and prepare for this. The situation is similar here. They immediately open positions for themselves in the fields, and accordingly, due to this, they can increase pressure on Novobakhmutovka. But here the situation will show everything in the coming days. Berdik Semenovka without any changes. There were attacks, by the way, from a thin, conditionally, in the direction of Yasnobrodovka. But we managed to repel them within the red zone, because everything that was published on geolinking from drone footage, that's all. I mean the blows of the IF with buckets on equipment, it all turned out to be within the red zone. The situation of the Russian troops has worsened a little bit here, but this is precisely due to the fact that the open field is the first moment and the second moment, despite the fact that they installed advanced RAP systems on armored vehicles. Nevertheless, the APU uses drones with a non-standard frequency, which allows it to bypass. In any case, of course, a certain number of drones are lost until you pick up this key to them. To hit the RAP system on a Russian tank or armored vehicle, but it works. So the situation has become more complicated for them here. We turn to Pervomaysky, where the enemy, as you remember, presses in the area of abandoned orchards in the south direction, in the direction of the beam of the house. And at the same time, he began to increase pressure a little to the east of these positions, that is, to go to the intersections of Pervomaysky near the E50 road, a section of the road to the tank monument, to the gas station. Here we note a clarification somewhere to a depth of 200 meters, somewhere in advance. But now the enemy is also pressing on this sector of the front. Actually, in short, the situation today. Here you can see that the enemy, having begun to press on the territory of abandoned orchards, is now trying to use its forces with the widest possible coverage due to numerical superiority and, accordingly, find a gap. due to such a sufficiently wide area of attacks. This means fruit orchards, conditionally yes, well, in fact, we take their 6 intersections. From which he attacks in a southerly direction. That's quite a lot. Well, he will also use his strength and armor in this sector of the front. Therefore, the plans are very clear to advance to the Tomaka beam, due to which it will be possible to partially align the front line in the direction of Novelsky. We continue to have active battles in this area. Krasnogurovka, there are fights in the direction of the street, so we have just the same Vachutina. Attempts are being made in this direction. With the red zone, it needs to be adjusted, because there are a number of our Osinters who, and also those who receive information from the place, draw the red zone, including Zheleznodorozhnaya and Lermontov streets. But only up to the middle of the southern part, about like this. Someone on the contrary is completely to the west. Someone that is a small ledge, so the situation here is on further clarification, but at the same time we state that attacks are now underway in the direction of the aforementioned Vachudin Street. Therefore, the situation here is still ambiguous. The enemy naturally filled this area with personnel, conducts assault operations. It's too early to talk about anything yet. Well, from the Afu, there are also strikes from the Heimersmullers on the positions and probable positions of Russian troops. So it's difficult to say what the situation is at the moment. But in any case, the number of videos from this area has decreased from the Russian side, which already says that there is not the same activity that there was before. Or they begin to be, so to speak, cautious, realizing that the High Mars Detention Center is involved here, so to speak. Very quickly and very accurately, their locations are hit in the forest, so this also creates difficulties for them. Moving on. Then we have not the Kurakov direction, but the South Donetsk section of the front, with the transition to the Ugledar direction. Here the enemy managed to make a very serious breakthrough in relation to the whole of those advances, which we stated were a fairly wide section of the front. The first point is that the western part of Novomikhailovka has come under the control of Russian troops. Well, actually, we said yesterday that it's just a matter of time, and it's clear that time is being won from our side in this way. Including time, naturally damage is being done to the combat capability of the Russian troops. Because no one here was going to give up just like that, but in any case, yes, the whole of Novomikhailovka now controlled by the enemy. This is the first moment. The second point is that naturally they had the strength, and we talked a lot, that they were transferring Dokashevsk and subsequently Sweet Steppe, Glorious, Taramchik. Well, they were pulling up to Novomikhailovka and from Sweet. At the same time we stated attacks on the Ugledar direction, conditionally in the direction of the Yuzhno Donbass mine number 1. And today we see that in the area of the Solonka beam, north and south of the beam, the enemy has also advanced. Well, according to the changes in the situation on the front line up to 6 and 2 kilometers wide, Russian troops advanced to a depth of up to 1.5 kilometers. The current situation is as follows. Active military operations are continuing, well, of course, due to the fact that the resource that they used on Bamikhailovka. But we are not talking about personnel, but about tactical aviation and artillery. They are now using a huge number of artillery strikes on the neighboring area, that is, between Novomikhailovka and Vladimirovka, in order, firstly, to level the front line, and secondly, to increase pressure on the Ugledar direction. Now there are active hostilities in this sector of the front,